Okay, hello everyone. Today we are going to demonstrate multi-factor screening with the Stocks Cafe tool. As we'll be performing multi-factor screening, we will need to use not just the Stocks Cafe tool to download the information. We would also need to use Excel. All right, so let's begin by discussing how we download the information onto Excel. All right, so what we need to do is that we need to get to the stock screener, and let's create a new screener name. All right, let's call it multi-factor STI screen. Okay, and we're going to add a condition, and what we need to do is that we want to add all the STI counters into the screen. So let's do this. For the students on my course, I already have the ERM STI component stocks. So let's make this mandatory, stocks within the subset, and let's add it in. Okay. And what we normally do after creating one condition is to immediately save the screener. Okay, and you would be able to find the screener, I guess, somewhere here. All right. Okay, and let's add a few more conditions. What we want to do is that we are performing the screen for 4 factors today. All right, and the first factor we are going to consider is that we want information on the free cash flow. All right, so it's going to be free cash flow yield, and we just need to perform a display of the metric. Okay, so we're going to add that in. Okay, and you'll be able to see free cash flow here. And we're going to add 3 more conditions to complete our screening criteria. So we're going to add free cash flow, and then we're going to add an old favorite, the price earnings ratio. Okay, price earnings ratio. Okay, and then we're going to add that in. Okay. And we are also going to add in information on the relative strength, all right, of the screen. So let us do that. Okay, relative strength, and in my program I have a tendency to use the 180 day relative strength. So let's add that in. All right, and finally, we're going to add one more condition, and this condition is the profit margin of a particular company. All right, so let's look for the net profit margin. Okay, net profit margin. Okay, so let's add this metric in. Okay, so this is how our screen looks like, and you notice that we're not filtering based on any specific condition. Our aim is just to display the numbers based on all 30 STI counters. So if we are going to run the screener, okay, and okay, and all the information that you need will then be displayed onto a table. All right, now we're not going to do any more further screening with Stocks Cafe, but this information here is a very useful one. So what we're going to do is that we're going to cut and paste all this, and we're going to get into our Excel where further screening will take place. All right, so let me just open my Excel. Let's open a blank workbook to do this. Okay, and we're going to just perform a paste of what we've created just now. All right, and the first thing that we need to do is that we need to do a little bit of cleaning. All right, all right, and you notice that there's a displacement among all the numbers here. So I'm first gonna collect all these numbers. I'm gonna cut them. I'm gonna paste them somewhere here. Okay. Okay, and you realize that the free cash flow, the price earnings ratio, the RSI and the net profit margin, they are all going to be at its correct location. Okay, and then I'm going to remove these unnecessary columns. Okay, so we now have a fairly clean table containing all the fundamental data that we actually want. All right, but that's not the end of the exercise yet. All right, what I'm going to do now is that I'm going to create two more rows at the bottom of the table that has the mean and the standard deviation. Okay, and this is going to be very important when we construct the scoring that would allow us to rank these stocks later on. All right, and using the mean command, all right, I will summon the average function, and we will create an average of the particular column that is shown above. Okay, and within a short period of time, we know the average free cash flow of all our STI counters. All right, and we could actually copy it, and we'll be able to get all the average numbers for all the different factors that we've downloaded from Stocks Cafe. Now we're going to do the same for standard deviation, and the standard deviation command is STDEVO. Okay, and we're going to do the same thing. All right, we're going to go through the data for the first column. And you'll be able to get the standard deviation as well. Okay. Okay, so we're basically done with the mean and standard deviation that we want. All right, so in the class, what we've learned is that we really want the Z-score for the corresponding free cash flow, PE, RSI, and net profit margin for an individual stock. So I'm going to start creating the columns right now. So the first column is the free cash flow Z-score. All right. And we do the same thing, all right, for PE. Okay, and we do the same thing for RSI, which is momentum, and we also do the same thing for profit margin. Okay. So now the next thing we want to do is that we want to put in the formula for the Z-score for a particular cell. All right, so we're going to calculate and create one particular case in the case of venture. All right, so we have to take the free cash flow per yield. All right, and then we have to minus off the mean. All right, and that's how you create the Z-score. And you have to group everything together. Okay, and then you have to divide by the standard deviation. Okay. Now we want to facilitate the copying later on. So we need to put a few dollar signs to make sure that as we perform the copying, it doesn't actually shift. All right. So we want the mean to more or less remain the same. So mean is at cell B32. Okay, cell B32. And we don't want the B32 to shift, so let's just put the dollar signs here, and we do the same for the standard deviation. Okay, all right, and once you do that, you'll be able to perform a calculation. It has a Z-score of negative 0.55, which means that venture has a free cash flow that is 0.55 standard deviations from the average for all STI blue chip counters. All right, we can proceed to basically replicate this equation to the ground, and you'll be able to get the corresponding Z scores. Okay. Now, we're going to do the same for the other columns. Okay. But as we perform the copy sideways, all right, the rows may shift. Okay. So what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to not allow this to be fixed anymore. Okay. So we're going to continue to do this. Let me just recopy the formula again. All right, there should be no change. Okay. And we can now do the same for the other rows. Okay. Right. So you notice that there is a corresponding change. It will be referencing the mean and the standard deviation for the PE column, the RSI column, as well as the profit margin column. Okay. And now we can just perform a copy and obtain the z-scores for all the factors that we have. Right. And finally, to actually get our final consolidated z-score, we need to create a new column, and this is basically a summation of the z-scores for each stock. All right. The higher the free cash flow is better, so we will begin by adding the corresponding z-score for free cash flow, but the lower the PE, the better. All right, so we would have to use a negative sign in front of the PE z-score. All right, and we want a higher momentum. All right, so higher z-score for RSI. And finally, for profit margin, we still want a higher profit margin, so we use a positive sign for profit margin. Now, if you do that, the final z-score for venture is 0.04. Okay, and finally, we just basically just replicate the formula all the way down, and we would be able to get a consolidated z-score for all the STI, and this is basically it. All right, this is basically what we want to achieve. We have a fully populated table with all the numerical screens that we need. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to standardize the appearance. Okay, and I'm just going to make it look slightly better. Okay, and then we will group the entire table that we have, all right, with the exception of the mean and standard deviation row, and we're going to go to the data column and we're going to perform a filter. All right, so this basically allows us to perform a level of sorting. All right, we're going to sort based on the column that says the z-score. Okay, and then we are simply going to sort from the largest to the smallest. Okay, and voila, magically, once you are able to examine the final z-score, you should be able to finalize the stocks that basically, based on our scoring system, would have on balance the highest free cash flow, the lowest PE ratio, the highest momentum, and the highest profit margin. And we've done it in a way that balances the effect of each factor. All right, and we would normally group the first 9, okay, and then we will move on to the next stage of screening that basically would go through stock by stock and look at the analyst reports for each counter. That is all for screening based on the Z-score. All right, thank you very much.